With the start of Act 2, we were finally given the catalyst to our Season Pass exotic, Alethonym. Now, we originally went over the base version during our Alethonym exotic review just before the start of Revenant, but that was just the dev build, which is why we're doing today's deep dive. This is when all the pieces come together, the exotic itself and the exotic catalyst. Now, does this catalyst change the game for this exotic? Not really. From a functional standpoint, nothing really stands out here, guys. It essentially just gives you the perk one for all. We're hitting 3 separate targets, increases damage for a short duration. It's a nice buff. I mean, we're talking 35% more damage for 10 seconds. And for something like a grenade launcher, it's really easy to hit 3 targets, right? Considering that AoE damage. But as far as the functionality of the exotic, no, there's no rhyme stiller. We have folks in the stream asking, could it have gotten something like Chill Clip? Perhaps, but it seems like Bungie just wanted to give it more damage. Keep in mind, this is a primary ammo grenade launcher. We only have one other type of weapon like that being Fighting Lion. So it kind of does make sense to give it a damage perk, and that 35% increase in damage from One For All is pretty nice. Now, an annoying thing about One For All is that if you have Overload Breach Grenade Launcher equipped, which most of us do, that unfortunately takes priority on your HUD over One For All. There will be many moments where I was sitting there trying to proc One For All, but I would notice that whenever I would proc it, Overload Breach Grenade Launcher would actually override it. And so visually, I didn't really know when I ran out of that buff duration. So between the Vestige meter, the overload shot symbol, it pretty much covers up everything, which is really annoying, at least when it comes to juggling One For All. And I know this kind of like veers off into the topic of our UI, what to do to our UI, how to make it better. And it is better than what it was a year or 2 years ago. But I would prefer to actually see when my trait is active versus Overload Grenade Launcher being procced. Now, for those that don't know anything about this exotic or how to obtain it, again, this is the seasonal exotic for Revenant. You can pick it right up from the Season Pass. And as far as the exotic catalyst goes, that unlocks at rank 145 of the Season Pass. You'll then be required to get 500 kills with the weapon itself, which will then fully masterwork your weapon, giving you One For All. Now, when we look at the base damage of Alethonym, there are a few numbers to look at since this behaves a little differently in certain situations. So it's important to take a look at the exotic perk Harvester Spike. This weapon fires a Harvester Spike projectile. Dealing final blows with this weapon creates a single vestige at a target's location. Impaling more powerful combatants with the projectile creates a steady stream of vestiges from the target. Now, something to note about Alethonym is that its projectile is very similar to, say, something like Mountaintop's micro missile, meaning you can rocket jump. Matter of fact, when we were actually cheesing the third encounter of Garden of Salvation, we were using Alethonym to easily hop up from ledge to ledge, as it has the ability to boost you, very similar to Mountaintop. Now, as far as when firing it at enemies, you'll see it easily taking out these red bars. But notice when we actually hit things like champions or bosses or anything that is a thicker target, the weapon will actually then stick to that target and deal a steady stream of damage and then detonate at the end. So as you can see here, Alethonym is like a combination of like Witherhoard, Mountaintop, but a primary grenade launcher all baked into one. Now, damage number wise, on a red bar enemy, we deal 51,982 damage, and our damage is split up between impact being 9,085 and our blast damage being 42,897. Now, when One For All being active, this of course increases it by 35% to 70,176, with our impact going up to 12,265 and that blast damage going up to 57,911. Now, we wanted to make sure that this actually applies across the board, even that damage over time. And if we do damage here to Carl, you actually see our damage at base being 54,176, that including that 3,831 damage per tick, which ticks for 6 times. But One For All being active increases that damage to 73,132, which, yes, even our tick damage here also goes up by 35%. We always like to just kind of make sure of this, guys, because every now and then Destiny do be bugging. Sometimes it could be a situation where the tick damage doesn't get the increase, which of course would be hugely detrimental for something like Alethonym. Now, again, One For All doesn't really push the needle all that much from like a stasis synergy standpoint, but you also have to remember that Alethonym serves as like your own way of providing heavy and special ammo for yourself and for your teammates. You see, Vestigial Alchemy is the trait on this weapon, where the weapon gains energy when you pick up vestiges and allows you to create ammo at the projectile impact point for you and your allies. Special ammo mode unlocks at 50% energy, while heavy ammo mode unlocks at 100% energy. You can actually see it right here, guys, in action. You'll see this little meter that fills up as these vestiges are acquired, which I know in game modes where ammo is readily available, especially with things like ammo crates, this may not be perceived as valuable, but I would say back in the day when we used to rely on things like Aeon Gauntlets and Sect of Insight, dude, this would have been incredibly valuable. So again, you've got a grenade launcher here that shoots primary ammo, which means it never runs out of ammo. It's got One for All as its exotic catalyst for that 35% damage buff. It provides heavy and special ammo for yourself and your teammates. You can rocket jump with it. And to top it all off, it can also deal damage over time. Which to me, it's like a huge reason why I love things like Witherhoard and Anarchy. Granted, Anarchy and Witherhoard put out way more damage than Alethonym. But me personally, guys, I've got like a hard on for damage over time weapons. Now, as far as the special and heavy ammo regeneration, it takes about 6 Vestiges to charge up to 50% for that special finder brick, and 12 to charge up to that heavy. And you get about a single Vestige per red bar enemy that you kill, and then just simply impaling bigger health targets. Think things like champions. This spits out a ton of Vestiges. We're talking like 5 to 6. Now, it's important to note, at least in our testing, that the Vestiges from impaling targets actually gives more energy than the single Vestiges you get from kills. Just shooting Carl and impaling him. This is where it would take 12 Vestiges total to fill up 100% of that meter. When only killing a red bar enemy though, it took 7 Vestiges to fill up 50% of the meter, and then 17 Vestiges total to fill it up to 100%. So in terms of just wanting to fill up the meter for those ammo bricks, impaling more powerful enemies, that being your mini bosses, champions, bosses, those are the things that will net you a substantial amount of Vestiges, which is fantastic for topping off ammo. Now I know it's only spitting out ammo finder mods, but if you happen to be rocking things like scavenger mods, this will pretty much keep you topped off at all times when it comes to ammo. Now, quick note, in our original video of Alethonym at the beginning of the season, I mentioned that I didn't really know how to activate the heavy ammo, or I couldn't get it to activate. Again, you just hold the reload button once for special, and then you hold it twice for heavy. It's such a neat little feature because if you look at your scope, it will turn either green or purple, indicating what you will spawn in on your next shot. Now, another interesting feature about Alethonym is that it can impale through immunity shields. So if you got bosses with immunity shields, you can still impale them, which will actually give you Vestiges like normal, even while dealing no damage. Taking a page out of Grand Overture's book. Now, this could of course get patched later, but for the time being, it's not. Now, with all that being said, how does Alethonym stack up to a number of our other grenade launchers? From special GLs to Mountaintop to Fighting Lion, hell, even Anarchy. And I know that's a heavy grenade launcher, but it does do damage over time with the Horde as well. And I just wanted to see what was the number comparison with One for All now being in the mix on this GL. Now again, starting from the top at base, these were our numbers for Alethonym. Then with One for All, you see the jump up by 35%, capping out at 73,132 damage against Carl. If we compare this directly to say something like Fighting Lion, which is our other primary exotic grenade launcher, we deal 31,049 damage against Carl. Granted, one of the big changes that's been made to Fighting Lion has been the inclusion of Volatile. Now Mountaintop, our other micro missile grenade launcher, does 46,655 damage on Carl. Now this depends of course on the role. Perks like Recombination greatly pick this up, but again, we're just comparing this to base Mountaintop. Now comparing it to other breach loaded grenade launchers, Malicious Birthright for instance, does 38,026 damage against Carl. Now Lost Signal, one of the most popular aerial denial frame grenade launchers in the game currently, and arguably one of the best weapons when it comes to topping off Transcendence, but you can see it here against Carl doing 60,710 damage. Again, that's its impact damage plus its AoE damage. Now for our heavy grenade launcher, Anarchy, which does an immense amount of tick damage, this one does 178,439 damage against Carl, and we're not even including kinetic impacts. Anarchy is very good this season, guys. Take full advantage. Now we're the Horde, another exotic special grenade launcher that also does tick damage, does 123,896 damage to Carl. Of course, it also has the ability to spread out these blights on the ground, and arguably one of the best weapons for locking down areas. Now lastly, I just wanted to compare it to another heavy grenade launcher, that being Edge Transit. Against Carl, this does 44,997 damage. Keep in mind though, you can just sit there and blow your load with it, and we're not even including perks like bait and switch. I think the main takeaway from this though is that Alethonym does hit really hard. You know, comparing it to special grenade launchers, when you include that damage over time against thicker targets, Alethonym actually hits harder. And even though it's roughly doing half the damage of say something like with the Horde, we do have to just pull it back and recognize that this is a primary grenade launcher. Now there's been a few suggestions pushed by the community on what they would have preferred as an exotic catalyst, or in this case, something additional on top of One for All. Considering that the exotic literally makes ammo, no lie, shoot to loot would be pretty good here. You could literally make your own ammo and then follow with an AoE hit from the GL to reload your weapons. I know that doesn't really dip into the stasis synergy of the weapon, but hell, I would take shoot the loot on this thing. Now a lot of people in stream also said they wanted to see chill clip on this weapon, which would have given it anti-champion capabilities. I'm not really sure how chill clip would work for this thing, considering you only hold one shot at a that time, would it just be like a situation where it always remains active? Perhaps. Rhyme Stealer was also another perk that was presented, especially considering that the exotic catalyst on Salvation's Grip happens to be Rhyme Stealer. The difference here is that Salvation's Grip has a means of freezing targets with the weapon itself. So Rhyme Stealer makes sense, and it's an easy one for Salvation's Grip to take advantage of. I'm not really sure if Rhyme Stealer itself here would have been a good choice for Alethonym. Now, could Bungie add one of these perks to our exotic catalyst on top of One for All? Absolutely. Look no further than something like Jotun, which has both Cornered and Incandescent. Wicked Implement has got Overflow from Stasis Shards and Headstone. And if you remember originally, Wicked Implement did not have Headstone. The Destiny community asked for it over and over, and eventually Bungie caved. Trial is Chosen is another one, with its exotic catalyst having things like Osmosis and Surplus together. So again, it's not completely uncommon to have an exotic catalyst that has multiple traits. And I think for Alethonym, where it kind of staggers itself between being a utility exotic while also hitting really hard now with One for All, the idea of it getting Chill Clip or even something as simple as Shoot to Loot would be amazing. So guys, that is our review for Alethonym now with its exotic catalyst. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.